To the story again, the National Strategic Plan Against Gender-Based Violence was adopted back in 2020, and it was aimed at ending the scourge through collaborative efforts and at a cost of 21 billion rand over 3 years. But now President Cyril Ramaphosa does admit that the plan is not working. He was speaking at the second presidential summit on gender-based violence. Crime stats showing that rape, sexual assault and murder of women and children continue to rise sharply. So let's take this discussion even further now. Nelisiwe Vilakazi from the KZN Social Development Department joining me this morning. And thank you so much, Nelisiwe, for your time. Good morning to you. I mean, that admission by the president quite telling that the National Strategic Plan is not working. We're seeing those numbers continuing to rise. What's your comment at the back of what the president had to say?
Thank you very much, and good morning to you and your viewers. I think the president, what he was highlighting is that as much as there are milestones that have been achieved by government and the civil society party, there's more that we need to do in order to ensure that we actually put down the numbers of those people that are victims of gender-based violence and femicide. I think we were acknowledging that there are still some gaps that we need to ensure that are addressed as soon as possible. But looking at the time when the plan was adopted 4 years ago, remember we had to come up with the pillars that address different sectors. So that has been done, but now it's a matter of ensuring that we accelerate the implementation. There are areas that are quicker for us to adopt, to actually implement, and there are those that are a little bit difficult, that need some time in actual fact to actually achieve. That looks into the issues of the change of the legislation and so on. Well, there are other areas in terms of the legislation that have been adopted, but I think what the civil society was worried about in the main was the issue of the council that is not yet in place. Officially, there is a commitment by government to ensure that that is accelerated.
Right. Nelisiwe, for those listening into our conversation right now, directly or indirectly impacted by GBVF, and I mean, as a country, this is a national problem. What is that more that still needs to be done? If you were to dissect where the gaps and the challenges are and where you still need to, as you mentioned, accelerate implementation, how would you go about it? What would your action plan look like?
I think what is important is that we strengthen working together, that is between government and civil society organizations, so that there is that integrated response. In fact, even before you respond to what has happened, because responding, you are being reactive. To be proactive in terms of advocacy, in terms of community education. And what is also more important is the issue of addressing even women and men communities in the deep rural areas. We've started that process in KwaZulu-Natal in ensuring that the traditional leaders are addressed, even the men and women in the rural areas, because you know that in some other areas there are challenges in terms of patriarchy and also the change of mindset, because you find that there are people who strongly believe that it's okay if a man can actually beat you. So we are raising that awareness to women to say you have a right, nobody has actually a right to actually abuse you and so on. That is important. But what also has come up very sharply is the issue of the children who are saying, we understand what you are doing with regard to the adults, but you are not in conversation with us in terms of gender-based violence and femicide, because we as children were affected as well. So we are also coming up with programs that will address children that are at school, so that even our social workers from social development point of view, we ensure that children are engaged as well.
If we may just touch on the rural setting and rural areas, particularly in KwaZulu-Natal, where you are based, Nelisiwe, take me through the challenges and also what you are doing, particularly as a department in KwaZulu-Natal, to ensure that you do address those challenges. I mean, Slindelo spoke to a guest earlier on who spoke about some of the religious challenges and belief systems that do not allow sex workers in particular to conduct their work their business of the day, calling for the decriminalizing of sex work in South Africa. But from a more KwaZulu-Natal perspective, particularly in rural areas, what are challenges that are unique that you still need to address, and what are you doing about them?
What we have done, especially with regard to men, we have done dialogues across all the districts in the province with men in particular, let alone the other programs where we deal with the women themselves. But with men in particular, we even came up with a colloquium where we wanted to know why men are angry. We had different people from academia, experts, and so on, and we did come up to the actual problems. So now we have come up with a plan of action to actually address issues that were raised during our dialogues with men. For example, what they are saying that they feel that we are putting more emphasis on women at the expense of men. One other critical area that has recently been raised by His Majesty the King was the fact that we need to actually strengthen our approach to boys, because you find that in KwaZulu-Natal we have girls who are maidens, who attend umhlanga and so on, but we are lean in terms of addressing the boys, in terms of the programs. We came up with a program called Boys Assembly as Department of Social Development, working with us, with other stakeholders, so that boys are also socialized in a proper way. Boys must understand it's okay to be emotional, to cry when you feel like crying. How do you treat girls? How do you have relationships with girls? And how do you ensure that you do not abuse or do not cause a gender-based violence? So there's a lot of work that we've already started. And what is important that we've seen is working for us in KwaZulu-Natal is the partnership that we have with the Association for the Taxis, SANTACO, where SANTACO, you know that SANTACO in the main is a male-dominated industry. So those people have a positive attitude towards gender-based violence. Now they are assisting us as we have partnered with them. Some have even agreed that they can even market no gender-based violence programs in their taxes and so on. And to us, that is very much working. And the traditional leaders are very responsive in terms of saying, come to our areas. We can make a contribution as traditional leaders in terms of addressing gender-based violence. The former, late His Majesty the King was even saying, if you are addressing a ward, just consider that one ward is made of different izigodi. So ensure that in each and every zigodi, men are part of your programs.
Well, I appreciate you speaking to us this morning and highlighting, of course, what you're doing as a province. The country will be waiting with bated breath to see the results of those efforts you communicate this morning, because it is a pandemic. South Africans are fed up. Women are dying. Children are dying. And there is, you know, an uncertainty, or rather an unsettlement. That's the word I'm looking for in the country. And answers are being looked for. So hopefully, of course, those efforts will yield positive results. Nelisiwe Vilakazi, KwaZulu-Natal Social Development Head of Department, thank you so much for speaking to us this morning.